Hey there and welcome to Transforming and Scaling Layers. So layers can be moved from one document to another. As we've seen, we can change the order of our layers and we can also change the size and scale and rotation of our layers. There are a ton of different options for transforming and scaling your layers. So we're going to show you how to do that in this example as well as some best practices. So let's go ahead and start off. We're going to open up our sample images here. So we've got two JPEGs. We're in Chapter 2, Section 5, Transforming Scaling Layers 1 and 2. So let's go ahead and hold Control or Command and click on both those and hit Open. Okay, now my goal here is to take this image and put it in that iPad. So the first thing that I'm going to do is use my Move tool. Okay, Move tool, let's grab this image. I'm going to hold Shift and click and drag from one image to another, and that simply just moves that layer onto this other layer. So let's go ahead and close this out. And I'm going to hit F for full screen. Okay, now as we've shown you guys in previous sections, if you're going to be doing some heavy transforming on a layer, I highly suggest making that into a smart object first. So let's go ahead and convert this into a smart object. So very easy to do, simply right click on your layer and go to Convert to Smart Object. You'll get your little smart object symbol right here. Now, the biggest reason that I suggest doing this, let's just undo this, just in case you guys didn't watch other sections here. Okay, so here we have our smart object, and here we have our regular layer. You can see this icon lets you know it's a smart object. So if I take both of these layers and scale them down super far, there we go. I've lost a lot of resolution on my regular layer, but the smart object retains its resolution because it's actually referencing this file. So let's go ahead and hit Control or Command T. I'm going to just scale those all the way back up there and hit Enter. And we can see this is our regular layer, and here's our smart object where we haven't lost any information. So again, if you're doing heavy transformations, I highly suggest using a smart object. So let's go ahead and delete our regular layer. There we are. And now, here with our smart object, we're going to hit Control or Command T, which is the beginning of our transformation. So within the transformation, Control or Command T, there are a lot of different options here in our option bar, and you can also get to different options by right-clicking on your layer. So here in our option bar, we have basically movement controls, so we can move along our x-axis and our y-axis. There we go, so you can simply change those numbers. You have width control, so you can change your width. You can change your height. There we go. And you can link these together so they change at the same time, which for most cases that's what you're going to want to do. And here you can change your angle or your rotation. Now, the other benefit, let's go ahead and hit that checkbox up there. The other benefit of using smart objects is that you can get back to the original state of the image. So if I hit Control or Command T again, check this out. My rotation settings and my height and width settings are all still available to me. So if I just type in 0 and type in 100, there we go. Let's just make sure these are linked. Then we're back to the original size and the original scale of our layer. If you're just using a regular layer, you won't have those options to go back because that basically just bakes in those new dimensions as the new dimensions of your layer. Okay, now moving on, let's hit Control or Command T. We also have some options for warping. So let's go ahead and click here on our warp. You have some different options for how you can warp your images. Now, for photographs, this sort of thing usually doesn't make sense, but if you're doing text or other types of graphics and you need it to transform or, scale to actually fit around an object, then this can be pretty helpful. All right, let's go ahead and hit Escape. So we've seen the options here along the top. These are the most common options you're going to be using. Now, if I hit Control or Command T, I can also right-click here, and I can tell it to scale. So if I hit Scale, then I'm going to be scaling the image larger and smaller. Control or Command T and right-click, you can rotate. You can also skew, and skewing will allow you to grab one corner and actually skew. There we go. And you can do this in multiple different directions. So you can change basically the perspective of your image, which we're going to be doing in just a second. Control or Command T and right click. You can also go just to perspective itself, and this will skew. You saw that skew did one side, perspective will do both sides. So you can see basically we're changing the perspective of the image. Right click and we're going to go to distort. Okay, and with distort, let's go ahead and pull this. You can see it's going to allow you to just pull any one of these corners that you'd like. Alright, right click will go to warp, and warp will allow you to just push and pull different areas of the photo as you'd like. Okay, so this is a warp that you can actually control, and you can use this for compositing reasons, like if you need one layer to kind of like fit into another layer, you can warp it into place. Alright, again, let's hit Control or Command T, right click, so you have some rotation options, as well as flipping this horizontally, let's flip it back, or flipping it vertically. There we go. So all that can be done to a layer, or any number of layers, or an entire group. All these controls are available to you at any point in time. So now that we've seen all these different controls we can do to a layer, let's go ahead and get this image onto that iPad. And to do that, we're going to start by transforming it. So I'm going to lower the opacity so I can see what I'm doing just a little bit better. There we go. And we're going to hit Control or Command T. So that's our transform. Now there's one thing we have not gone over just yet, and this is our control point. So by default, your control point is going to be in the very center. It's just this little point here, and you can click there and drag it out and move it to different areas. Now your control point basically controls where your transformations are going to take place. So if I move this out over here and I rotate, you're going to see it's going to rotate around that point. Okay? If I move it over here, it's going to now rotate around that point. And you can lock it into different places on the image. So Control or Command T, you can use this little square to say, put it on the top right of the image. There we go. Or you can put it on the bottom right of the image, just like that. Left and back to center again. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, let's go ahead and I'm going to align the bottom right corner of my layer to the bottom right corner of this little iPad here. Alright, and let's go ahead and zoom back out. Now I'd like to go ahead and take my control point and move it to the bottom right, and we're going to rotate this image right around just like that, and kind of line this area up. So I want this line to fit with the line of the iPad. Okay, so we're looking pretty good. Now I'm going to hold Shift and click here, and we're just going to scale this down. So Shift, just make sure we have our aspect ratio maintained. Okay, so we're going to scale that right down to about there until we've got, there we go, until we've got the top corner with the top corner of our iPad. So as far as this is concerned, that corner looks pretty good, that corner looks pretty good too. Now, we are now dealing with a little bit of perspective. So the perspective of this image kind of changes, right? This corner needs to be pulled down, and this corner needs to be pulled down as well. So what I'm going to do is hold Control or Command and pull this corner down. So if you hold Control or Command, you can actually click on any corner or any center of the layer and simply move that image. So by holding Control or Command and pulling down, you can see now I'm able to change the perspective of this photograph to make it actually fit into this iPad. Alright, let's go ahead and hit that little checkbox and we're good to go. So basically, it applied that transformation onto this smart object. So now that we have this image transformed into perspective, it looks like it's in the same perspective as the tablet. The only problem is it's kind of overlapping the side of the tablet here, right? So we need to use a layer mask to define, basically just want it to be visible in the black area within the tablet. So let's go ahead and make this layer invisible temporarily. I'm going to grab our polygonal lasso tool. So here's our polygonal lasso tool. I'm just going to click here on the top left. There we go. Let's go down to the bottom right there. Perfect. There we go. One more click here. Very easy to make this selection because it's just a rectangle, and click there. Okay, so now that I have this selection, let's go ahead and make our layer visible. And with my selection active, I can click on my layer mask, and it's going to load that selection into our layer mask. So now I can go ahead and bring my opacity up all the way to 100%. Now we're looking pretty good here. You can see the edge is just a little bit too, hard of an edge. That's because this image is just slightly out of focus. So what I can do is I can move my layer and my layer mask. Right now they're linked together. So if I were to move one, the other one's going to move with it, right? If I unlink these, I can move just the layer itself, or I could move just the layer mask. Now in this case, I don't really need to move it. I want to apply a little bit of a blur to just the layer mask, and that's going to help this edge look a little bit more realistic. So let's click on our layer mask. I'm going to go to Filter, down to Blur and Gaussian Blur, and we're just going to choose a little bit less of a blur, just something to make the edge look a little bit more realistic. Alright, that looks really good. So now we can go ahead and link those back together again. Now, if I need to lower down the opacity, just make it a little bit darker to make it kind of like blend in with the image a little bit better. There we go. We're looking really good. Now, keep in mind that this is a smart object, right? The image in the background, we made a smart object. So let's say we want to add some text over top of this image, but I want to have it be perfectly in perspective on this tablet, right? Like, I don't want to just create some text and like, you know, text there and try to like transform it and scale it to this same thing. What I can do is I can just go into this smart object and put the text on my smart object. So let's show you how to do that. Really easy to do, and by the end of this tutorial you'll see the benefits of smart objects. They're so great. So let's go ahead and just double click on this smart object, and it just opens up my image in a new window. So this is the image that's being referenced right over here. So I'm going to hit T for my type tool. Alright, and type in something like getaway today. She's looking at like a vacation website or something like that. Alright, let's go ahead and select everything and align that vertically. The guy on a motorcycle outside. And let's go ahead and change our font weight to regular. Perfect. Now all I have to do is save this smart object, Control-Command-S, and it's going to automatically update right there. Check that out. And because I transformed the smart object and scaled it here, it scales properly with that. So let's go ahead and make this text just a little bit smaller. Control-Command-T and hit Control-Command-S to save that, and we can see getaway today. And you know what? I'm like, okay, I still can't read it, so let's make it bold. And then save that, make it a little bit bigger, and save that out. So you can see all the changes that I make to this smart object are automatically updated here. All you have to do is save it, and then when you're done, close it out, and you're good to go. So you can now see that this smart object is what's transformed. I have the layer mask telling it to only be visible right there, and this transformation applies to anything else that's on the smart object. So let's say we decide to go back into this smart object. Again, just double click right here on your smart object. Okay, let's make a little new layer. I'm going to use my marquee tool. Make a selection like that. Let's go to edit, down to fill, and we're going to fill that with white. We'll go ahead and save that. Just make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Control-Command-S to save that. So you can see I'm making all these changes and I'm viewing them in real time. Just hit Control-Command-S and it'll automatically update your smart object here. And then let's go ahead and use some of our alignment tools. So I'm going to hold Control or Command and click on all three of these layers. We're going to go to our Move tool and I'm going to distribute them vertically, which will center automatically this with the other two. And save this. Got a lot of traffic happening outside right now. And there we go. Now let's just try moving this down a little bit. Maybe back up just a little bit. Perfect. And we can see basically we're creating our little ad here and then seeing what it looks like in perspective on this other document. Let's go ahead and close that out and we are good to go. So here we can see we've basically gone through all of our different transformations that we can do with the layer, showed you the advantages of using smart objects, and then we can edit those smart objects and they will automatically update on your image. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you in our next section on layer masks and visibility. Alright guys, we'll see you in the next video.